I'm Gregory Reed, 72 years old. 2 days ago, my son-in-law, Todd, locked the door between my garage cot and the main house. "Security," he said, smiling. He told me I was a burden, a confused old man who should be grateful for a roof over his head. He thought I was a poor retired carpenter with nowhere else to go. He thought he had won. He didn't know about the phone call I was about to make. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that underestimating the quiet ones is the biggest mistake you can make. My name is Gregory Reed. I am 72 years old, and for the first time in nearly 50 years, I am completely alone. The silence in this house, our house in Pasadena, is a physical weight. It's been 2 years since my Clara passed, but the quiet just gets louder. Every creak in the floorboards, every tick of the grandfather clock in the hall is a reminder of her absence. This morning I was in the attic packing away her winter clothes. The smell of lavender and cedar still clung to her favorite wool sweater. I pressed it to my face and the loss felt as sharp as it did the day she left me. This house isn't a home anymore. It's a museum of a life that's over. It's too big. Too many memories ambush me in every room. The kitchen where we'd dance while waiting for the kettle to boil. The workshop out back where she'd bring me lemonade, her hands cool against my dusty skin. My daughter Megan is all I have left. She's my only child. When Clara was in hospice in those last lucid moments, she made me promise. "Greg," she whispered, her grip surprisingly strong. "Take care of our girl. She's sensitive. Protect her." How could I refuse? Megan is sensitive. Always has been. She sees the world in bright colors but without the hard edges of reality. Clara was always the one who provided those edges, the one who handled the practical, difficult parts of life. Now that job was mine. I looked around the large 4-bedroom house Clara had insisted we buy back when her investments started paying off. "It's for the family, Greg," she'd said. But the family was just me now, and Megan was struggling. She and her husband Todd were cramped in a tiny apartment, always stressed about money, always irritable. I taped up the last box. The decision was made. I would give Megan this house. It was the last promise I could keep for Clara. I would give my daughter the security her mother always wanted for her. I called them over that night. I'd made pot roast Clara's recipe. Megan looked tired, dark circles under her eyes. Todd looked hungry. He always had that restless energy, a man constantly scanning the room for an angle. "I've made a decision," I announced after dinner, setting my fork down. The sound seemed too loud in the quiet dining room. "I'm giving you both this house." Megan's eyes went wide. "Dad, what? What do you mean?" Todd, however, reacted instantly. He shot up from his chair, his face breaking into a performance of overwhelming emotion. He rushed over and hugged me, a grip that felt more like a python seizing prey than affection. It almost hurt. "Dad." "My God. Dad." He choked out, his voice thick. "You are an amazing man. We don't know what to say. Of course you will always have a home here. Always. Your family." His gratitude was too loud, too theatrical. It drowned out Megan's quiet tears. She just kept whispering, "Are you sure, Dad? Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I told her, patting her hand, though my eyes were on Todd. He had already started pacing the room, his gaze sweeping over the crown, molding the hardwood floors. He wasn't seeing a home. He was seeing an asset. A week later, we were in the lawyer's office. Not my lawyer, I realize now. Just Mr. Henderson, a simple family attorney Clara and I had used for basic wills years ago. He looked uncomfortable. "Greg," he said, adjusting his glasses and peering over the rims. "This is an irrevocable action. You are signing over the title completely. Are you absolutely certain you want to do this? There are other options. A trust, perhaps." Todd, sitting beside me, clapped a heavy proprietary hand on my shoulder. Dad knows what he's doing, don't you, Dad? We're family. We'll take care of him. I felt a flicker of irritation at being spoken for, but I brushed it away. This was for Megan. I'm sure, Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice firm. It's what Clara would have wanted. Henderson sighed, a sound of resigned defeat. As you wish. He pushed the stack of papers across the desk. My hand hovered over it. I looked at Megan. She was biting her lip, looking at Todd, not at me. Just one thing, I said, pulling the pen back. Todd's smile tightened. Anything, Dad. I'll stay in the guest room, I said. The one downstairs by the den. It has its own bathroom. I'll be out of your way. Of course, Todd boomed, laughing with relief. Greg, this is your house. You can stay anywhere you want. We'd never dream of anything else. That's just an oral agreement between us. Family, right? Right, I said. Family. I picked up the pen. I thought of Clara's face, her worried eyes. Protect her. I signed the papers. I signed away the house I had shared with my wife for 40 years, the house I had raised my daughter in, the house I thought I would die in. I signed it all away for an oral agreement. I had no idea the ink wasn't even dry before their plans for me had already begun. They moved in within 3 days. The house was suddenly full of boxes, noise, and the sound of Todd's booming voice on the phone. That's right, the property value in this Pasadena neighborhood is skyrocketing. We just secured our future. I settled into the downstairs guest room as agreed. I unpacked my few things, placing Clara's photo on the nightstand. It felt strange being a guest in my own home, but I told myself it was for Megan. It was worth it to see her happy. The first 2 months were fine. Awkward, but fine. Todd was excessively polite, always calling me Dad, offering me coffee, asking about my day. Megan seemed happy, bustling around redecorating. I tried to stay in my room, to be invisible. The change began subtly. The thermostat was always kept too low for my old bones. My brand of coffee stopped appearing in the pantry. Small things. Then the announcement came. I was reading in my room when Megan and Todd knocked, then entered without waiting for an answer. Megan was glowing, holding a small white plastic stick. Dad, she said, her voice trembling with genuine joy. I'm pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather. My heart swelled. A grandchild. A new life in this house. All the doubt, all the cold nights suddenly felt worth it. I hugged her, my eyes blurring. That's wonderful news, Pumpkin. Just wonderful. Todd stood behind her, arms crossed, a strange smile on his face. It wasn't the smile of a father-to-be. It was the smile of a man whose plan had just clicked into place. He let the joy settle for one day. The next evening, he knocked on my door. This time, he was alone. His face was arranged in lines of careful concern. Dad, Greg. He started using that affectionate term that now felt like a tool. We need to talk. I put my book down. What is it, Todd? It's about the baby. He motioned around my room. This is the only bedroom on the ground floor, right next to the kitchen. It's perfect for a nursery. Direct access, no stairs. We need it. The air was sucked from my lungs. The oral agreement. The always have a home here promise. All of it evaporated. I understand, I managed to say. But Todd, where will I go? Todd's smile broadened, almost benevolent. He placed that heavy, controlling hand on my shoulder again. Don't you worry, Dad, he said. We thought of everything. We spent the whole weekend cleaning out the garage. It's going to be cozy. It's just temporary, of course. Just until we get things sorted out. He led me to the door that connected the kitchen to the garage. He opened it. The smell hit me first. A damp, metallic smell of gasoline, old oil, and dust. He flicked on the light. A single bare bulb hanging from a cord illuminated the space. The garage. My beautiful, organized workshop was gone. My tools, my workbench all shoved against the far wall under a dusty tarp. In the middle of the concrete floor stained with decades of oil leaks sat my old cot from the guest room. Next to it was the washing machine and dryer. "See?" Todd said, his voice echoing slightly. "Plenty of space. You've even got your own private entrance." And he pointed to the roll-up garage door. I couldn't speak. This wasn't a room. It was a concrete box. "I know it's not the guest room," Todd continued, his false sympathy making my skin crawl. "But with the baby coming, we all have to make sacrifices. Right? Sacrifices. I had sacrificed my home. Now I was sacrificing my dignity." Megan appeared behind him. She wouldn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. "It's just for a little while, Dad," she whispered, twisting her hands. "Just until we get the nursery set up and figure things out." "Figure what out?" I wanted to scream. "I'm your father." But I just nodded. I was 72 years old. I was tired, and I had nowhere else to go. "Okay, Pumpkin," I said, my voice sounding thin. "If it's for the baby." They left, closing the door to the kitchen behind them. The click of the lock sounded final. That night was the first night. I lay on the cot. The concrete floor leached the warmth from my body. The single blanket they'd given me was thin. I had to put on my old work coat just to stop my teeth from chattering. The washer and dryer sat next to me like two silent, bulky guards. Through the thin wall, I could hear them. I heard the television. I heard them laughing at a show. I heard the clink of glasses. I heard Todd's booming voice and Megan's lighter laugh. They were warm. They were comfortable. They were in my kitchen, in my living room. And I, Gregory Reed, the man who had built this house, the man who had paid for every nail and every board, was lying in the dark, shivering in his own garage. I pulled the coat tighter. The smell of oil and dust filled my nose. I closed my eyes, but I couldn't sleep. I just listened to them laugh. This wasn't temporary. I knew it. This was the new reality. And as the cold settled deep into my bones for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt since Clara died. I felt fear. Not just fear of the cold, but fear of what these people, my family, were capable of. And I was right to be afraid. I just had no idea how right I was. Temporary is a word that stretches. It's a dangerous, elastic word. You pull it a little, then a little more, and eventually it loses all meaning, all shape until it just snaps. The first week in the garage was my temporary trial. I told myself it was for the baby. I told myself I was being helpful, making a small sacrifice for my daughter's new family. I learned the routine of the garage. I'd wake up before dawn, my joints stiff and screaming from the cold that seeped up from the concrete floor. I'd wait until I heard the shower running upstairs, before I'd use the utility sink in the garage to wash my face, the water icy cold, smelling of rust. I was trying to be invisible. I was trying not to be a bother. But on the 8th day, temporary became permanent. I went to the kitchen door, the one that led from my cold cement box into the warmth of the house. I turned the knob. It didn't budge. I tried again. It was locked. I knocked softly. "Todd, Megan, the door seems to be stuck." I heard footsteps, then a pause. Finally, the door opened, but only a few inches, just enough for me to see Todd's eye and part of his mouth. He wasn't smiling. "Oh, hey, Dad. Yeah, we had to lock it." My stomach tightened. Lock it. Why is something wrong? He leaned against the doorframe, a solid, immovable presence blocking my view of the kitchen I had tiled myself stone by stone. "Security, Dad," he said, his voice laced with false patience. "You know, with the baby coming, we just can't have doors unlocked all over the place. Megan is feeling vulnerable. Her hormones are all over the map. It's for her peace of mind." His words were smooth, reasonable, wrapped in the language of concern. But the message was a punch to the gut. I was now outside. I was a security risk. The garage wasn't part of the house. It was an outbuilding like a shed. But Todd, I said, my voice quiet, feeling the shame rise in my throat. The bathroom. How am I supposed to… You know, he actually chuckled. A small, dismissive sound. Oh, don't be dramatic, Greg. Just walk around. Knock on the front door. We'll let you in, besides. He added, his smile widening. It's good for you to get some fresh air anyway. Keeps the blood moving in those old legs. He closed the door. I heard the distinct metallic thud of the deadbolt sliding home. The humiliation was a physical thing. It was a cold sickness that started in my stomach and spread to my limbs. I stood there for a full minute staring at the wood grain of the door I had installed with my own hands 30 years ago. My first walk of shame was at 10 o'clock that morning. It was a ritual I would come to know well. I needed the bathroom. I had to put on my coat. I opened the rattling roll-up garage door, the sound echoing in the morning quiet. I walked down my own driveway past the flower beds Clara had so meticulously tended. I walked up the pathway, the one I had laid with bricks, stone by stone. I stood on my own front porch under the porch light I had wired. And I knocked. I felt like a solicitor, a beggar, a stranger. I waited. I could hear the television inside, the faint sound of a morning game show. I knocked again, this time harder, my knuckles stinging against the solid oak. Megan, Todd, it's Dad. Finally the door opened. It was Megan. She wouldn't look at me. Her eyes darted past my shoulder as if checking to see if any neighbors were watching. Oh, hi, Dad, she mumbled. You need something. The question was so absurd, so cruel, I almost laughed. I need the bathroom pumpkin. Oh, right. Come in. She held the door open just enough for me to squeeze by as if I were a delivery man, as if I might track mud on her clean floor. I used the downstairs powder room, the one that used to be mine. I washed my hands, avoided my own reflection in the mirror, and walked back to the front door. She was waiting for me, her arms crossed, tapping her foot. All set? She asked. Yes, thank you. I left. I walked the long loop back to my concrete box. It got worse. Sometimes they wouldn't answer. It was a Tuesday. A cold, miserable Pasadena drizzle had started, the kind that soaks you to the bone. It was getting dark. I needed to use the bathroom before I settled in for the night. I walked around. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder, my knuckles stinging. Megan, Todd, I know you're in there. I just need the bathroom. I could hear them. I knew I could. They were in the living room just 20 feet away. The TV was on the volume slightly louder than usual. They were ignoring me. I stood on the porch for 10 minutes, the cold rain soaking through my thin jacket, plastering my hair to my head. I was 72 years old, standing outside my own home, shivering, being denied entry by the two people I had given everything to. Finally, the door opened. It was Todd. He looked annoyed, genuinely put out. What is all this racket, Greg? He snapped. You're disturbing Megan. She's trying to nap. It's raining, Todd. I was knocking for 10 minutes. I'm soaked. Well, we didn't hear you. He lied, his eyes flat and cold. You need to be more patient. You can't just demand things like a child. I squeezed past him, dripping water onto the pristine entryway tile. He sighed, a loud theatrical sound of exasperation. Great, just great. Now I have to clean that up. The new phase of my humiliation started that night. The food. I had gotten used to eating my meals in the garage. They would bring me a plate, usually whatever they were having. But that night, Todd brought me something different. He came into the garage holding a plastic-wrapped paper plate. On it was a small gray square of what looked like leftover lasagna. It was cold. Here, he said, setting it on a cardboard box next to my cot. We're starting a new regimen, for your health. I looked at the congealed cheese, the single piece of lettuce next to it. What regimen? What's wrong with this, Joe? It's cold, Todd. And it's tiny. This is barely a snack. He adopted that fake patient tone again, the one you use on a child or a simpleton. Dad. Greg, you eat too much. It's not healthy. Doctors say old people should eat less. It's bad for the heart, all that rich food. We're just trying to look out for you. But aren't you even going to heat it up? He looked at me as if I had asked him to move a mountain. The microwave is in the kitchen, Greg, he said, as if stating the obvious. And you know the kitchen is off limits after dark. Security. We just talked about this. He smiled that empty, chilling smile. Just eat it. It's fine. Good night. He left, pulling the door shut. I didn't hear the deadbolt this time, but I knew it was locked. I stared at the plate. I thought of the thousands of meals Clara had cooked in that kitchen. The pot roasts, the steaming soups, the birthday cakes. I was 72 years old. I was cold. I was wet from the rain. And I was hungry. I sat on my cot listening to the hum of the dryer, and I ate cold lasagna with a plastic fork. This wasn't neglect. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was systematic. It was a strategy. They weren't just making me uncomfortable. They were trying to break me. They were trying to erase me. And the worst part, the part that settled like ice in my gut, was the realization that this was only the beginning. The cold was the first thing that broke me. Not the humiliation of the garage, not the locked door, but the persistent damp cold of the Pasadena night that seeped up from the concrete floor. It felt like it was getting into my bones, making my joints ache in ways they never had before. I was 72 years old, and I was perpetually cold. I spent a week eating cold scraps, walking the long loop to the front door to beg for entry to the bathroom, and listening to the muffled sounds of their happy life through the wall. I was tired. I was so profoundly tired. Todd found me sitting on the cot, rubbing my hands together. He came in holding an envelope. "Hey, Dad," he said. He was using the concerned voice again. It was the one that always put me on edge. "I caught this in the mail. It's the electric bill. It's marked past due." I frowned, the fog in my brain struggling to clear. That can't be right. Clara set up autopay for everything years ago. Todd sighed, a long, theatrical sound of a man burdened by the incompetence of others. "That's the thing, Dad. When the title of the house transferred, it messed up all the utility accounts. They're all in our names now, and it's all online. It's complicated." He let that word hang in the air. Complicated. The modern world. The world of passwords and portals that Clara had always handled. "I tried to fix it," he continued, "but they need your Social Security information to verify the old account, and the pension deposit needs to be rerouted. It's a whole digital mess. It's a lot for someone." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. For someone your age. I rubbed my eyes. I was too tired to fight. I was too cold to argue. "I don't understand that stuff, Todd. Clara always—" "I know," he said, and his voice dripped with fake sympathy. He sat down on a stack of tires across from me, leaning forward as if sharing a secret. "Look, I manage all of our finances online. It's no big deal for me to just add yours to the list. I can manage your pension deposit, make sure the power and water bills are paid, handle your Social Security portal. That way you don't have to worry about a thing. Not one thing. Let me take this burden off your shoulders, Dad. You've earned a rest." A rest. It sounded so good. Not having to worry. Not having to think. "Okay, Todd." I whispered the words, tasting like defeat. "If you think it's best." "I do," he said, his smile instant. He pulled his laptop from his bag right there in the garage, balancing it on his knees. "Great. Let's just get your bank login, your password, and your Social Security number. We'll have this sorted in 5 minutes." I sat there on my cot next to the washing machine, and I dictated the passwords to him. Clara's passwords. The numbers and letters that held the last pieces of our life together. I felt a sharp sting of betrayal, not from him, but to her. I was giving away the keys to our kingdom. His fingers flew across the keyboard, clicking and tapping. And done, he announced, closing the laptop with a satisfied snap. See, easy. Everything is handled. You just relax, Dad. I'll take care of everything from now on. He stood up, patted my shoulder. You just focus on, resting. He left, pulling the kitchen door shut behind him. I didn't hear the deadbolt this time. He didn't need it. He had just locked a different, more effective door. I was left alone in the garage, feeling a new kind of emptiness. I thought I had nothing left to lose. I was wrong. I had just lost my independence. A few days passed. The new routine was this. I woke up cold. I knocked on the front door. I used the bathroom. I returned to the garage. A cold plate of food would appear at noon and another at night. I had no money. I hadn't held a dollar bill in my hands since I'd given him my bank information. I felt like a ghost or a prisoner. I wasn't sure which. I had to get out. Just for an hour. Just to feel the sun on my face. To go to the park, the one where I used to take Megan to push her on the swings. To see other human faces, to remind myself I was still alive. My old truck keys. My last piece of freedom. They were in the pocket of my heavy work coat hanging on a nail by the garage door. I put on the coat, my fingers fumbling for the familiar cold metal. The pocket was empty. A cold dread sharper than the garage air washed over me. I checked the other pocket. Nothing. I checked my pants. Nothing. I went to the main roll-up garage door, the one I used to drive my truck through. I grabbed the handle to lift it. It didn't move. I looked closer. There was a new heavy-duty padlock securing the latch to the frame. He had locked me in. I stood there, breathing fast, panic rising in my chest when I heard a sound. Todd was in the driveway polishing his new luxury SUV, a metallic blue monster I didn't recognize. He was whistling. I pounded on the metal door. Todd, my keys are gone and you've locked the door." The whistling stopped. I heard his footsteps. He used a key to unlock the small side door to the garage, the one I never used. He stepped inside holding a polishing rag. The concerned son was gone. This was someone else. This was the man in charge. "Greg," he said, and the shift from Dad to Greg hit me like a slap. "We need to talk about the truck." "What about my truck? I just want to go to the park. Where are my keys?" Todd dropped the rag. His face hardened. "That's the problem. You can't be trusted with it anymore." "What are you talking about, trusted? It's my truck." "Not anymore, Greg," he said, his voice flat. "And you almost hit Mrs. Diaz yesterday." My mind raced. What Mrs. Diaz? I haven't driven in a week. I haven't even seen Mrs. Diaz. Todd shook his head, a perfect performance of sad responsibility. "See, that's what worries me. You don't even remember. She called Megan last night, absolutely terrified. Said you blew right through the stop sign at the corner. Almost T-boned her. You could have killed someone, Dad. You could have killed yourself." I tried to search my memory. Was it possible? Was my mind slipping? The garage was so cold. My thoughts had been foggy. A small, terrible seed of doubt began to sprout. Did I do that? I don't remember that. I stammered. "Exactly," Todd said, pouncing on my uncertainty. "I can't in good conscience let you drive. The insurance premiums are already sky high because of your age. If you get in an accident, we would be liable. We could lose the house." The house. The house I gave them. Now it was a weapon to be used against me. "So what?" I whispered, the fight draining out of me. "You're just taking my truck." "I'm protecting you, Greg. he said, his voice sharp as glass. I'm protecting this family. You need to stay home. It's safer for everyone. He looked around the garage, his eyes landing on my cot. This is fine. You have everything you need here. He turned to leave. Todd, wait, I said, a final desperate plea. You can't lock me in here. He turned back, and all traces of the concerned son-in-law were gone. His eyes were cold, flat, and full of an emotion I couldn't place. It was annoyance. I was an inconvenience. It's for your own good, he said. You wander. The doctor said people your age wander. We can't have you getting lost. Just stay put. We'll bring you your meals. He stepped out and closed the side door. I heard the key turn in the lock. I was alone. I looked at my cot. I looked at the locked door to the kitchen. I looked at the new padlock on the main garage door. I looked at the locked side door. No money. No transportation. No access to the outside world. No access to the inside of my own home. I was no longer just a guest. I wasn't just an inconvenience. I was a prisoner. The isolation was no longer just emotional. It was physical. It was absolute. And the worst part, the part that made my blood run cold, was the sudden, terrifying realization. They weren't trying to break me. They were trying to contain me. And you only contain something until you're ready to get rid of it. I lost track of time. How long had it been since I'd been locked in 3 days 4? Garage had no clock. Only the changing slice of light from the one small high window. It was a grimy, cobwebbed square of glass near the roofline facing the narrow side yard that separated my house from Mrs. Diaz's. It was my only connection to the outside world. I would stand on an overturned crate, my hands braced on the wall, just to watch life happen. I'd see the mailman pass, see kids ride their bikes down the street. I felt like a man buried alive. I was standing there, the cold of the concrete seeping through the soles of my shoes, when I saw her. Maria Diaz. She was in her garden pulling weeds. Maria and I and our spouses had been neighbors for 30 years. Clara and she used to trade recipes over the back fence. She was a good woman, sharp as a tack, and she didn't miss a thing. I must have made a sound, maybe a small groan of despair, because she suddenly stopped weeding. She looked up, her hand shielding her eyes. She scanned her yard, then her eyes moved to my garage. She saw me, a tiny silhouette in a dark, dirty window. Her expression was pure confusion. She tilted her head. I saw her mouth form my name. Greg. I just stared, too ashamed to wave, too desperate not to. She put down her trowel and walked closer, stopping at the property line. Greg. Is that you? What on earth are you doing up there? I couldn't shout. I was terrified Todd would hear me. I just pressed my hand to the glass. She stared for a long moment. Her confusion slowly melted into a dawning horror. She looked from the window down to the locked garage door, then back to my face. She put her hand over her mouth. I watched her turn and hurry back into her house. My heart sank. Of course. What could she do? She probably thought I was crazy, just like Todd wanted everyone to believe. I was the crazy old man in the garage. I slid off the crate and sat on my cot, the feeling of hopelessness heavier than ever. About 20 minutes later, I heard a sound that made my heart stop. It was the jingle of keys at the garage side door, the other locked door. I froze. Was it Todd? Had he seen me at the window? Was he coming to punish me for trying to communicate? I heard a key slide into the lock, a metallic rattle, a click. The door opened. It was Maria Diaz. She was holding a steaming thermos in one hand and a plate with a thick sandwich on it. Her eyes, wide and horrified, swept over the scene. They took in the bare bulb, the cot shoved against the washing machine, the thin, dirty blanket, the smell of oil and damp, and me huddled in my coat. Greg, she whispered, her voice trembling. Oh my God! What is this? What have they done to you? The dam of my pride, the last thing I had broke. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head, the shame so thick I couldn't breathe. Maria, it's not what it looks like. I stammered the lie, tasting like ash in my mouth. I'm sorting old tools. You know, a man's project. She took a step inside, the warmth from her body, the smell of her perfume filling the cold space. She looked me right in the eyes, and she knew I was lying. Sorting tools, she said, her voice soft but sharp. Greg, it is 40 degrees in here. You are sleeping on a cot. I've seen them lock this door. I've seen them bring you these scraps on paper plates. Her gaze was unbearable. It wasn't angry. It was worse. It was full of pity. That pity was 1,000 times more painful than Todd's cruelty. His cruelty I could understand as greed. Her pity confirmed my status. I was a victim, a pathetic old man moved to the garage by his ungrateful children. I'm fine, Maria. Really, I insisted, trying to regain some shred of dignity. Megan's pregnant. They need the room. It's just for a little while. Maria Diaz set the thermos and the plate down on my workbench. She didn't buy the lie for a second. Clara, she said, her voice shaking with a sudden cold anger. Clara would have burned this house to the ground before she let them treat you this way. Hearing her name, hearing that truth was like a physical blow. I finally broke. I sat down on the cot and buried my face in my trembling hands. I gave them everything, I whispered. I gave them the house. I know, she said. We all saw it. Greg, this is not right. This is abuse. She put her hand on my shoulder. It was the first kind human touch I had felt in weeks. You can't stay here. You come with me. You can stay in my guest room. I was so tempted. The thought of a warm bed, a clean room, a kind face. But then I thought of Todd. I thought of his flat, cold eyes. I thought of what he would do to her if she interfered. He would call the police and say she was kidnapping a confused old man. He would make her life hell. No, I said, lifting my head. I can't put you in the middle of this, Maria. It's my family. It's my mess. I have to handle it. She looked at me, her eyes brimming with frustrated tears. How, Greg, by freezing to death out here while they laugh inside, they've taken your car. I saw Todd driving it yesterday. They've taken your money. They've locked you in. I'm working on something. I lied again, though a small, desperate ember of a plan was starting to form. I just need a little more time. Maria knew she couldn't force me. She was a smart woman. She nodded, her face hardening with a resolve I recognized. It was the same resolve I was starting to feel myself. All right, Greg, she said. I won't force you, but I am not going to let you starve or freeze. She pointed to the thermos. That's chicken soup. It's hot. Eat it now. She pointed to the sandwich. That's for later. I will bring you food every day. I'll leave it by this door. She handed me a small object from her pocket. An old prepaid burner phone. This is charged, she said. It has one number in it. Mine. Don't use it unless it's a life or death emergency. They watch this house, Greg. They watch you. But if you need help, if you are in danger, you call me. Do you understand? I took the phone, my hand closing around the small piece of plastic. It felt heavier than a brick. It was a lifeline. Thank you, Maria, I whispered. How did you get in? She held up her key ring. You and Clara gave me a spare key to your garage side door 10 years ago after that little fire in the kitchen. You said just in case of emergency. I guess Todd never thought to ask for it back. He doesn't know I have it. She looked around the garage one more time, her face filled with disgust. He's a fool, Greg. They're all fools, and they are cruel. Don't let them win. She slipped out the door as quietly as she had come. I heard the lock click back into place. I was alone again, but something had changed. I was no longer just a prisoner. I had an ally, I had a phone, and I had a thermos of hot soup. I opened it. The steam rose, smelling of home, of kindness, of a world that still existed outside these concrete walls. I drank it, and the warmth spread through my chest. It wasn't just soup. It was fuel. It was anger. It was the beginning of a fight. The cold found its way in. It moved past the layers of my old coat, past my skin, and settled deep in my lungs. It started as a dry, hacking cough that I could muffle in the thin blanket. By the third week of my imprisonment, it had become a different beast entirely. It was a deep, wet, racking cough, the kind that starts in your feet and feels like it's trying to turn your lungs inside out. It left me breathless, gasping in the damp, oily air, my head spinning. I was 72 years old, burning with fever, but shaking with a cold that wouldn't leave. I was drowning in my own garage. It was late, maybe 2 in the morning. The coughing fit had been so violent, it left me dizzy spots dancing in my vision. I was burning up. I was so thirsty. I needed water. Just one glass of water. I dragged myself off the cot, my legs trembling, and shuffled the few feet to the locked kitchen door. I was about to knock, to bang on it, to plead for them to open it, but I froze. I heard their voices. They weren't muffled in the living room. They were right there, just inches away on the other side of the door. They were in the kitchen making coffee at 2 in the morning. They must have thought I was asleep. My coughing fits were usually loud enough to wake the dead, but I had fallen into a brief, wheezing silence. I leaned my hot forehead against the cool wood of the door, trying to catch my breath. Another cough escaped, a horrible, rattling, wet sound. I tried to stifle it, but it was too late. I heard Todd sigh, a sound of pure exasperation. Listen to him. He's coughing like he's dying out there. His voice was low, irritated, not concerned. I held my breath, praying I had misheard. Then after a pause, I heard him say the words that stopped my heart. Honestly good. It would save us a fortune in medical costs. The faster he goes, the better. I waited for Megan to defend me. I waited for the daughter I had raised to scream at him, to slap him. But her reply was weak, distracted, and brittle with anxiety. Todd, don't say that. It's awful. But there was no anger in her voice, just nerves. That's not what I'm worried about right now. I heard the sound of paper crinkling, of an envelope being slapped down on the counter. I'm worried about this, she said, her voice dropping to a panicked whisper. The HELOC. The bank called again today, Todd. They said the application is stalled. They said because he's still technically on the old trust deeds. I don't know, it's complicated, but they said they need his signature. They will not approve the home equity line of credit until he signs. I heard Todd slam his hand on the kitchen counter. The sound made me jump, and the jump triggered another coughing fit. I muffled it into my sleeve, my eyes watering. His signature, Todd hissed, his voice venomous. He's sleeping in the garage. What right does he have to sign anything? I don't know, Todd. That's just what the bank said. Megan's voice was rising, cracking with panic. It's his house. Or it was his house. They said his name is still tied to the trust. He has to sign. Damn it, Todd growled. We need that money. We need that $250,000. This investment opportunity is not going to wait. It's our only way out, Megan. You know what they said would happen if I don't pay. Investment pay who? My fevered mind couldn't keep up. But what if he says no? Megan whispered, her voice terrified. What if he won't sign after, after the garage? He's barely spoken a word to me. He just looks at me. The silence on the other side of the door stretched for a long, cold moment. I held my breath, the cough burning in my chest, desperate to hear his answer. When Todd finally spoke, his voice was no longer angry. It was cold. It was calm. It was the calmest, most terrifying sound I had ever heard. "If he won't sign," Todd said, "then we go to Plan B. We prove he's incompetent." Incompetent? Yes. We'll get a doctor. We'll find a doctor who will certify he's senile. He's already acting the part. He's sick, he's locked in the garage. He probably talks to himself out there. We'll get power of attorney. We'll sign the papers for him. But, Todd, that could take weeks, Megan fretted. We don't have weeks. The bank, the deadline. I know, Todd cut her off. I heard him take a deep breath. Then we go to Plan C. Plan C, what? What's Plan C? It's simple, Megan. His voice was barely a whisper, a sound that cut through the wood, through the fever, straight into my soul. He just disappears. Disappear. The word didn't even make sense. It hung in the air between the kitchen and the garage, an impossible, venomous thing. He just needs to disappear. He was talking about me, my son-in-law, my daughter standing right there listening. They were talking about getting rid of me, murdering me, for $250,000. I backed away from the door, my legs suddenly giving way. I stumbled backward and collapsed onto the cot. The fever was raging, my body was shaking, but my mind was suddenly terribly crystal clear. This wasn't neglect. This wasn't cruelty. This was a plot. The cold, the isolation, the hunger. It was all designed to break me, to make me seem crazy. And if that didn't work, I was disposable. I was just an old man who needed to disappear. I looked at the locked door to the kitchen. I looked at the new padlock on the main garage door. They thought I was trapped. They thought I was sick and weak and senile, an animal in a cage. But as I lay there in the freezing dark, my hand shaking, I remembered Clara's voice, sharp and clear from years ago. "Greg, if you are ever in real trouble, the kind you can't talk your way out of, you call Mike Sullivan. He owes you." My hand fumbled in the dark, sliding under the thin mattress. My fingers brushed against the small, cold toolbox Clara had insisted I keep under my bed. And inside, beneath a rusty wrench, was the burner phone she had given me. My own lifeline. My hand closed around it. Disappear. I thought the rage suddenly burning hotter than the fever. We'll see who disappears. Disappear. The word hung in the cold, oily air of the garage. It cut through my fever, through the haze of my sickness, through the despair that had been crushing me. It was like a bucket of ice water to the face. This wasn't about them being selfish. This wasn't about them being thoughtless or greedy. This was a murder plot. My daughter and her husband were calmly discussing my elimination over coffee just a few feet away from where I lay, sick and freezing. All the pity I felt for myself vanished, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. They weren't just letting me die. They were planning to make me die. And in that moment of absolute chilling focus, I remembered Clara. Her face sharp and intelligent even in her last days. Her hand gripping mine. Her voice was weak, but her words were steel. "Greg," she had whispered, her eyes intense. "You are a good man. That is your strength. But you are too trusting. You don't see the snakes." I had tried to argue, but she shushed me. "Listen. If anything truly bad ever happens, the kind you can't just fix with your good nature, I want you to call Mike Sullivan. Just Mike. He owes you. He will answer." Mike Sullivan. I hadn't thought of him in years. My buddy from Vietnam. The man I'd pulled out of a firefight. He'd gone on to become something powerful, something in security or law, I wasn't sure. Clara had kept in touch. "He owes you," she'd said. My coughing fit returned a terrible, racking sound. I choked it back, my body convulsing silently. I couldn't let them hear me. I had to wait. I lay still, every nerve on fire, listening, until I heard the kitchen door close, their footsteps fading as they went back to their warm beds. Now. My body screamed in protest. Every joint ached, my head pounded. But the new cold terror gave me strength. I rolled off the cot, my feet hitting the freezing concrete. I stifled another cough, the taste of blood in my mouth. I crawled on my hands and knees to the corner of the garage, to the old wooden workbench they had shoved aside. Underneath it was my old toolbox. My real tools, not the cheap set they kept in the kitchen drawer. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely work the latch. It felt rusted shut. I fumbled with it, tears of frustration and fever streaming down my face. Finally, it snapped open with a click that sounded as loud as a gunshot in the silent garage. I pushed aside hammers, wrenches, the familiar smell of wood shavings and metal. And there at the bottom, wrapped in an oil rag, just as Clara had left it, was a small, heavy object. An old-fashioned prepaid burner phone. I pulled it out. It was cold solid. I fumbled for the power button, my thumb slipping. Come on, come on. The small screen flickered to life, its blue light painfully bright in the darkness. 1 bar of battery. 1 saved contact. Mike. I pressed the call button. I held the phone to my ear, my heart hammering against my ribs so loud I was sure they could hear it in the house. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Each ring was an eternity. What if he didn't answer? What if the number was dead? What if Clara was wrong? The ringing stopped. A click. A gravelly voice, sharp and alert even at this hour, barked one word into the silence. Sullivan. I almost sobbed with relief. My voice came out as a broken, feverish whisper. I had to force the words past the cough in my throat. Mike, I whispered. Mike, it's Greg Reed. I'm in serious trouble. There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. For a terrible long second, I thought the call had dropped. The single battery bar flashed red. The fever was making me dizzy. Maybe I had imagined the voice. Mike, I whispered again, my voice cracking, followed by a choked, wet cough. Did you hear me? The voice that came back was no longer just gravelly. It was arctic. It was a cold, controlled rage that I had not heard in 50 years. Greg, he said, his voice dangerously low, a surgical sharpness to it. Say that again. Where are you? I'm in my garage, I whispered the words tumbling out, the shame burning me. I gave them the house, Mike. I gave Megan the house. And they put me in the garage. They locked me in. They think I'm senile. They're talking about making me disappear. I heard him inhale sharply. It was not a sound of surprise. It was a sound of confirmation, like a blade being drawn from a sheath. They locked you in the garage, he repeated. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. It was a verdict. Yes. I sobbed, the fever and the humiliation finally breaking the dam. I'm sick, Mike. I'm so cold. They're talking about getting a HELOC, a fake doctor. They want me gone. They want me to disappear. Mike Sullivan wasn't just a lawyer. That's what Clara had always called him, a lawyer to simplify things. But Mike didn't operate in courtrooms. He operated in boardrooms, data centers, and the quiet, shadowed places in between. He was a problem solver. He was the man I had dragged out of a rice paddy under heavy fire in the jungle of Vietnam back in 1971. I had carried him for 2 miles on my back, his blood soaking through my uniform, while he screamed at me to leave him behind. I didn't. I saved his life. He went on to build an empire. Private security, corporate intelligence, high-stakes crisis management. He was the man billionaires called when their children were kidnapped. He was the man politicians called when a scandal was about to break. He was a force of nature, a ghost with a global network, a man who could make problems and people vanish. And in 50 years, he had never, ever forgotten that I saved his life. Clara knew that. She knew he was a weapon, and she had tucked him away in my toolbox, just in case. The silence on the phone ended. Greg, Mike's voice was pure steel. Listen to me. Listen very carefully. Do not, under any circumstances, let them know you have this phone. Do not let them know you called me. Do you understand me? Yes, I whispered, the cough rattling my chest. You said they think you're senile. They think you're confused. Yes, weak, a burden. Good, he said. The word was terrifying. Play the part. You are weak. You are confused. You are the pathetic old man they think you are. Can you do that, Greg? Can you be a soldier for one more day? The word soldier snapped something into focus. The fever, the fear. They receded just a fraction, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Yes, I said, my voice a little firmer. I can do that. Are they bringing you food? Cold, just leftovers. Don't eat it, he commanded, his voice sharp. Not anymore. Tell them your stomach is sick. Tell them you can't keep anything down. Maria Diaz. Is she still your neighbor, the good one? Yes, she brought me soup last week. She gave me a different phone. A burner. Good. Maria is reliable. My team will coordinate with her. She will get you clean food and water. Do not eat or drink anything Todd or Megan give you. Is that clear? My blood turned to ice colder than the concrete floor. Mike, you think I think they just discussed making you disappear. Greg. He cut me off. I am not taking any chances. They've already locked you in. Poison is the next logical step. It's clean. It looks like a heart attack or a stroke in an old sick man. I couldn't breathe. What do I do, Mike? I whispered. You do nothing, he commanded. You stay in that garage. You are sick. You are dying. Let them believe it. Let them get comfortable. Let them get arrogant. But Mike, they're talking to a bank. That loan. $250,000. I know, Mike said. I heard you. I want to know who they owe. I want to know what this investment is. I want to know everything. The more arrogant they get, the more mistakes they make. When are you coming? I asked, my voice trembling, feeling the fever take over again. I'm not coming, Greg. I'm already here. I frowned. What? My team is 5 minutes from your house. They will be in place before the sun comes up. They will be invisible. They will be watching the house. They will be watching Maria's house. They will have eyes and ears on everything. My God, Mike! Greg! His voice was final, the voice of a general giving an order. They locked you in the garage. They think you are an animal. They are about to find out. They locked themselves in the cage with a lion. Now hang up this phone. Turn it off. Put it back in the toolbox. Use Maria's phone only for a life or death emergency. My team will contact you through her. Stay alive, Greg. That's your only job now. Stay alive. The call ended. I sat in the darkness, the phone heavy in my hand. The garage was still freezing. The floor was still hard. I was still sick. But I was no longer cold. I was burning with a cold, clear fire. I turned off the phone, slid it back into the toolbox, and buried it under the wrench. I crawled back to the cot. I pulled the thin, filthy blanket over my shoulders. And for the first time in weeks, I waited. I spent the next 2 days following Mike's orders. It was the hardest acting job of my life. My fever was real. My cough was real. I barely touched the cold, slimy eggs Todd pushed through the garage door. My stomach, son, I croaked when he collected the untouched plate. I just can't keep anything down. He just shrugged, his eyes empty of concern, clearly annoyed that I was complicating his routine. He didn't offer medicine. He didn't offer a doctor. He just took the plate and locked the door. Maria Diaz, my angel. My lifeline left a thermos of hot, clear broth and a fresh bottle of water by the side door at 3 a.m, just as Mike's team had coordinated. I drank it in the freezing dark, feeling like a rat in a sewer, but a rat who was now part of a plan, I was weak, but I was no longer afraid. I was angry, and I was waiting. The knock came on Friday afternoon. It wasn't the front door, and it wasn't the rattling of the lock on the side door from Maria. It was a sharp, official-sounding knock on the door that led to the kitchen. I heard Todd's voice, loud and welcoming. "Right this way, ma'am. He's just in here. We've tried to make it as comfortable as possible." The deadbolt slid back. The door opened. Todd stood there, his face a perfect mask of worried exhaustion. Megan stood just behind him, twisting a handkerchief in her hands, her eyes red and puffy. She was a good actress. I had to give her that. And standing in front of them was a woman I'd never seen before. She was in her 40s, wearing a plain beige pantsuit and practical flat shoes. She carried a clipboard. She had kind, tired eyes, but they were sharp and they missed nothing. "Mr. Reed," she asked, her voice soft and professional. "My name is Ms. Evans. I'm with Adult Protective Services. We received an anonymous tip expressing concern for your welfare." I froze just as Mike had instructed. I huddled on the cot, pulling the thin, dirty blanket around my shoulders, and looked at her with wide, confused eyes. "Oh, thank God you're here!" Megan burst out, her voice cracking perfectly. We're the ones who called. We just don't know what to do anymore." It was brilliant. A masterful lie. They were seizing the narrative, painting themselves as the desperate, caring family who had reached out for help. They were claiming the anonymous tip as their own. Todd put his arm around Megan, pulling her close in a protective gesture. "My wife is pregnant, Ms. Evans," he said, his voice low and serious. "The stress of this, it's getting to her. We've been trying to care for him, but he's just not himself anymore." Ms. Evans looked from their worried faces back to me. I was the perfect picture of a victim. I was huddled in a filthy coat, shaking from my very real fever. I looked the part. "Mr. Reed," Ms. Evans said gently, stepping past Todd and into the garage. The smell of oil and damp cement hit her, but she didn't flinch. She knelt in front of me on the filthy concrete. "Your family says you're unwell. Is that true?" I looked up, letting my eyes go unfocused. I squinted at her. "Clara," I whispered, my voice a dry rasp. "Is that you? Did you bring the lemonade? It's so hot in here." I saw Megan's shoulders sag in relief behind Miss Evans. Todd shot her a triumphant look. "See?" Todd whispered, his voice heavy with fake sadness. "He thinks you're his dead wife. He doesn't know where he is." Ms. Evans's kind eyes never left mine. "My name is Ms. Evans Gregg. Clara isn't here. Do you know where you are?" I looked around the garage, my eyes wide and scared, as if seeing it for the first time. This is my workshop. I have to fix the leg. The chair leg. Clara needs it. For the dinner party." I started to whimper. It wasn't hard to fake. The fever was real. The misery was real. "He's been like this for weeks." Megan sniffled, dabbing her fake tears. "It's getting worse. He wanders. We're terrified he's going to hurt himself. We didn't know who else to call." "So you've confined him to the garage, Miss?" Evans asked, her voice still neutral, still kind, as she looked around. "Good Lord, no," Todd exclaimed, looking genuinely horrified by the suggestion. "We would never confine him. This is his choice. He loves it out here. He thinks it's his old workshop from 30 years ago. He gets agitated if we try to bring him into the main house. He says it's too new and it confuses him. We just couldn't bear to see him so unhappy." Megan added, her voice a perfect blend of exhaustion and martyrdom. "We moved his cot out here so he could be near his tools. We thought it would comfort him." It was a perfect story. It explained everything. The cot, the tools, the locked door to the kitchen. He gets agitated. the padlocked main garage door he wanders. They had an answer for everything. They were good. They were very, very good. Miss Evans nodded slowly, writing on her clipboard. "And the plates?" she asked, nodding toward the stack of paper plates with dried food scraps near my cot. "He's a picky eater now," Todd said instantly. "He only wants certain things, and he breaks the ceramic. He threw a plate last week, isn't that right, Megan? Almost hit the dog." We didn't have a dog. Ms. Evans stood up. She walked around the small, cold space. She noted the lack of a heater. She noted the padlocked main door. "It seems challenging." "It is," Todd said, sighing. "But he's family. What else can you do? We need help. We were hoping you could recommend a specialist, or maybe a good assisted living facility, somewhere safe for him." Ms. Evans closed her clipboard. Her kind eyes were unreadable. "Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I have what I need for my report. I'll be in touch if we have any follow-up recommendations, perhaps a list of facilities in the area." "Oh, thank you." Megan breathed as if a great weight had been lifted. "That would be a blessing. Thank you so much." Ms. Evans gave me one last look. A look of, was it pity? Or something else I couldn't tell. Then she left, walking out through the kitchen with Todd and Megan, who were now all smiles and worried brows. I waited. I heard the front door close. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. The kitchen door burst open. It wasn't locked. Todd and Megan stormed in, their faces completely transformed. The masks were off. They were giddy. They were triumphant. "Did you see that?" Todd was grinning, his eyes bright with victory. "She bought it. She bought every single word, hook, line, and sinker." Megan was laughing, a high-pitched, almost hysterical sound. "Oh my God. Todd, you were brilliant. He gets agitated. And him, Clara, where's the lemonade? He's even crazier than we thought. This is perfect." "This is more than perfect," Todd said, grabbing her by the waist and pulling her close. "This isn't a problem. This is an opportunity. Assisted living facilities." She said it herself. She's on our side. She'll make the recommendation, and we'll be the poor, exhausted children who just have to follow the state's advice. We'll have him out of here in a month. We're going to get that loan, baby. We're going to get that money. They kissed a long, greedy kiss right there in the garage, right in front of me, as if I were a piece of furniture. They left laughing, and this time they didn't just close the kitchen door. They slammed it, a sound of triumph. I heard the deadbolt thud back into place. I sat on my cot, my body still shaking from the performance, but the fever felt different. It was the heat of pure, undiluted rage. They thought they had won. They thought the social worker was their savior, their ticket to my money. But as the adrenaline faded, I saw Todd's face in my mind again. He was celebrating, yes, but just before he slammed the door, I had seen another look, a flicker of something else. Doubt, a sudden jarring thought that wiped the smile from his face for a split second. I realized he wasn't just celebrating that he had fooled her. He was relieved that he had an ally. But the question was now in his head planted. An anonymous tip, who would have called? He had isolated me completely. Who was watching? I knew, as I sat there in the dark, that his celebration would be short-lived. The paranoia was about to set in. He thought he had just won a small battle. He had no idea he had just confirmed to my general that the war was real, and Mike Sullivan's wars were never small. I followed Mike's orders for 2 days. It was a new kind of hell. The fever from my cold was real, a hot, dry misery that made my skin ache. My cough was real, a deep, rattling sound that I tried to muffle in the thin blanket. I refused the food they slid into the garage, the cold, congealed plates of eggs or leftover pasta. "My stomach," I'd croak through the door. "I just can't keep anything down." I heard Todd's frustrated sigh on the other side. "Fine. Starve then." The door would slam shut, the deadbolt clicking home. I was living on the hot broth and clean water Maria Diaz left for me by the side door at 3 in the morning, a silent, ghostly exchange. I would drink the broth in the freezing dark, feeling like an animal in a trap, but an animal that was finally terribly awake. The waiting was its own torture. I had seen the look of triumph on Todd's face after the social worker left. He thought he had won. He thought he had an ally in the state. He thought I was finished. The burner phone Maria had given me was my only link. It had been silent since the visit from Ms. Evans, Mike's operative. I kept it hidden under my cot, my hand checking for its cold plastic shape every few minutes. On the third night, it vibrated silently against the concrete. I fumbled for it, my heart leaping into my throat. A text from Maria. "He needs to talk. Now. Stand by." My body tensed. I waited. A minute later, the phone buzzed again, this time an incoming call from an unknown encrypted number. I pressed the button, my thumb shaking. "Greg." It was Mike's voice. No greeting. Just business. "I'm here, Mike. What did she say?" Did she believe them?" There was a pause. "She believed they're a danger to you." Mike said, his voice cold. "She confirmed they are arrogant, they are stupid, and they are desperate. But Greg, it's worse than we thought." A chill that had nothing to do with the fever ran down my spine. "Worse, Mike, they're planning to have me committed. They're stealing my money." "That's the slow plan, Greg. That's for appearances. The problem is, they don't have time for the slow plan." My team dug into that investment opportunity Todd mentioned. "The $250,000 loan," I whispered. "That's the one," Mike said. "There is no investment opportunity. Your son-in-law Todd is a degenerate gambler. He's been flying to Vegas twice a month for the last year. He's into a loan shark out there, a man they call Sharky." "My God," I whispered, sitting up on the cot. "He owes him $150,000, Greg. The debt was due last week. Sharky gave him an extension, but the interest, let's just say it's climbing fast. Todd isn't investing, Greg. He's running. That $250,000 HELOC isn't to build a future. It's to pay off the shark and use the extra $100,000 to disappear." It all clicked into place. The desperation, the panic, the rush. "He has a deadline," Mike continued, his voice flat. 2 weeks. That's the extension Sharky gave him. If he doesn't pay, the collateral isn't the house, Greg. It's his kneecaps. Or worse. This man isn't just greedy. He's a cornered animal. And he's desperate enough to kill to get that money. The words "disappear" echoed in my head. My own words, my own fears now confirmed. But Megan," I stammered, my mind clinging to one last piece of hope, one last reason to believe my daughter wasn't a monster. "My daughter, she wouldn't. She's pregnant, Mike. She's just scared. She's protecting her baby. That's why they need the room. That's why this all started." The silence on the other end of the line was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was heavy, and it was full of pity. "Mike," I asked, my voice breaking, "she is pregnant. Isn't she? I saw the test. She was glowing." Mike's voice, when he finally spoke, was softer than I'd ever heard it. It was full of a pain that he clearly felt for me. "Greg, sit down. Are you sitting down? I'm on the cot," I whispered, my blood turning to ice. "What is it?" "My team ran full background checks, Greg. Medical intercepts. We pulled her records from her OBGYN. Is the baby okay?" I pleaded. "Greg," he said, taking a slow breath, "there is no baby." The words didn't make sense. They floated in the air. "No, baby." What do you mean? I saw the stick. She was glowing. She had morning sickness. I heard her. She hasn't had a doctor's appointment in over a year. Mike said, his voice flat and brutal with the truth. She hasn't had a prescription filled. She hasn't had a checkup. The morning sickness, the hormones, the vulnerability Todd mentioned to Ms. Evans, it's all a lie. A performance. The pregnancy is fake, Greg. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the concrete floor. I just stared at the wall, the garage, the cot, the locked door, all of it. The entire reason for my sacrifice. The one thing that made the cold bearable. The one hope I was clinging to. A grandchild. It was a lie. It was a cold, calculated, monstrous lie. They didn't just need my room. They needed a reason to take it. They needed a weapon to make me feel guilty, to make me move, to cast me out. And my daughter, my sensitive Megan, had used the one thing in the world she knew I wanted more than anything. She had faked a baby. She had faked the one joy I had left. I fumbled for the phone, my hand shaking so violently I could barely pick it up. Mike, are you sure? 100%, Greg. It was a lie to get you out of that room. It was the easiest way to isolate you, to make you the other, to justify locking the door. She wasn't protecting a new life, Greg. She was actively, knowingly helping him destroy yours. The last piece of my old life, the image I had of my daughter as a good person who was just weak and manipulated, shattered into a million pieces. She wasn't a victim. She was his partner. I began to cough, but this time it wasn't from the sickness. It was a dry, racking sob that tore from my chest. Greg, are you still there? Mike's voice was urgent. I couldn't speak. I just sat there in the dark and the cold, holding the phone, a 72-year-old fool who had been betrayed by the one person he had left in the world. It's over, Mike, I finally whispered. It's all over. No, Greg. Mike's voice was suddenly hard again, pulling me back from the edge. It's not over. It's just begun. You're not a victim anymore, Greg. You're a witness. And now we fight back. The phone felt slick in my hand, slick with the sweat of my fever. I was gasping, trying to pull air into my aching lungs. A lie, Mike. The baby. It was all a lie. Yes, Greg. It was. Mike's voice was flat, devoid of emotion. He was in military mode. He was pulling me out of shock, forcing me to focus on the next threat. Stay with me, Greg. That was the emotional part. Now we talk about the financial part. We need to move fast. My mind was still stuck on the image of Megan glowing, holding that white plastic stick. A performance. All of it. The money, I repeated, my voice hollow. The HELOC, the $250,000. No, Greg, not their loan. Your money. Your personal accounts. The ones you gave Todd the password to. I tried to clear my head. He said he was just paying the bills, the utilities. The autopay was messed up. He paid the bills, Greg, Mike said, his voice clipped. And then he paid himself. My team analyzed the transfers. The day after you gave him your password 2 months ago, Todd transferred a lump sum of $40,000 from your retirement account directly into his own personal checking account. I couldn't breathe. 40,000, but that was almost everything. That was what Clara and I. It was a large chunk of your liquid assets, Greg. Mike cut me off, sparing me no sentiment. He is bleeding you dry. He's funding his gambling escape plan with your life savings. He needed that 40,000 to show good faith to the shark in Vegas before the deadline. He forced her. I stammered, the last piece of my hope for my daughter fighting to survive. Todd did it. He must have threatened her. She just went along with it. She's weak. Mike, she's so sensitive, but she's not a thief. The silence that followed was worse than the last one. It was heavy, and it was final. Mike, I whispered, she's not a thief, right? Greg, Mike said, and his voice was heavy like a judge about to pass sentence. You need to listen to me. Todd stole $40,000 2 months ago. That is a fact. But he wasn't the only one stealing from you. I didn't understand. What do you mean? Todd has been stealing for 2 months. But my team didn't stop there. We pulled your records for the last 6 months. The thefts. They started before Todd ever got your passwords. No, I said. It was a reflex. Just no. Small amounts at first. Mike continued, his voice relentless, a hammer chipping away at my last defense. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. From a different account. Your personal savings. The one you've had since before Megan was even born. I don't understand. Who? It was Megan. The words just hung there in the cold, dark garage. It was Megan. No, I said again, louder this time, shaking my head violently, even though no one could see me. No, that's impossible. She wouldn't know how. She's not smart with money. She's your daughter, Greg, Mike said, his voice cutting through my denial. She knew your mother's maiden name. She knew the name of your first dog. She knew the street you grew up on. She didn't need a password. She just clicked, forgot password, and reset your entire account 3 months before Todd even asked for the login. She's been siphoning money from you for half a year. I tried to find air. There was none. I was suffocating. But why? I choked out. For him to help him with his gambling debts. No, Greg, Mike said, and this was the final fatal blow. That's the part you're not getting. They aren't a team. They're competitors. He doesn't know about her stealing, and she doesn't know the full extent of his. They are lying to you, and they are lying to each other. He paused, letting the poison sink in. We tracked her purchases, Greg. Todd's $40,000 went to a numbered account likely for the loan shark. But Megan's $20,000, Greg. $20,000. He let me process the number. $20,000. Where did it go, Mike? I whispered, already knowing I didn't want the answer. Gucci handbags, Greg. Spa days at the Beverly Wilshire. A new designer wardrobe. And a girls' weekend to Napa Valley first class last month. The memory hit me sharp and vivid. Megan coming home from that trip. She'd been so happy, truly glowing, just like when she'd faked the pregnancy test. She'd shown me a new, expensive-looking leather purse. Look, Dad, she had chirped, spinning in the kitchen, while I ate my cold sandwich on the garage step. Isn't it beautiful? My boss just adores me. He said I've been working so hard, he wanted to give me a little bonus. I had been so proud. My sensitive girl, my pumpkin, finally succeeding on her own. I had told her how proud I was. I had told her she deserved it. She had smiled, kissed my cheek, and then gently closed the kitchen door in my face, locking the deadbolt. She had been lying. She had been on vacation paid for with my money, the money Clara and I had saved penny by penny. The money I was living without, huddled in the cold, while she drank first-class wine in Napa. Todd was a desperate animal, cornered and dangerous. But this was worse. This wasn't desperation. This was parasitic. This was cold. This was a betrayal of my love, my pride, my entire life's work as a father. I realized in that freezing garage that I was mourning 2 children, not one. The daughter I loved had died a long, long time ago. I just hadn't been to the funeral. I couldn't speak. The phone felt impossibly heavy, a cold weight in my shaking hand. The image of Megan, my Megan smiling in Napa while I shivered in the dark, just kept replaying in my mind. She wasn't a victim of Todd. She was his competition. They were two hyenas circling me, lying to me and lying to each other, each one trying to tear off the bigger piece. Mike, I finally managed to whisper, my voice hoarse from the fever and the coughing. What do I do? They've taken everything. They have the house. They're trying to get a loan on my house. I signed the papers. I gave it to them. It's over. I have nothing left. No. The word was so sharp, so sudden, it cut right through my despair. What? I said. No, Greg. Mike's voice changed. The pity was gone, replaced by something I hadn't heard in 50 years. It was the sound of a general who had just seen the enemy walk into a perfectly laid trap. Listen to me. They haven't taken anything. They don't have the house. They can't get a loan on the house. My fevered brain couldn't follow. What are you talking about, Mike? I was there. I signed the deed. I handed it to them. I gave it all away. I was a fool. No, Greg, Mike said, and I could almost hear him smile. You weren't a fool. You were just married to a genius. He paused, letting the statement hang in the air. Clara. My heart ached. Clara, what does she have to do with this? Greg, my legal team didn't just look at your bank accounts. They pulled the full property title history for your Pasadena home. They pulled every document filed with the county recorder's office for the last 20 years. I was still lost. Mike, I don't... Greg, he interrupted, his voice building with triumph. Clara never trusted Todd, not from the day Megan brought him home. She thought he was a parasite. She told me so herself. I remembered the arguments. Clara trying to warn me, trying to tell me she saw something in Todd's eyes, and I, the trusting fool, had defended him. He makes her happy, Clara, I'd said. Give him a chance. She did give him a chance, Greg, Mike continued. A chance to prove her right. And then she protected you. 5 years ago, 2 years before she even got sick, Clara came to my office. She said she was worried about you and Megan's financial vampire. She said she needed to protect the house. She needed to protect you from your own good heart. What did she do, Mike? I whispered, my hand gripping the phone. 5 years ago, Clara had you both sign a stack of papers. She told you it was routine estate planning, something to do with taxes. Do you remember? I vaguely recalled a day in a lawyer's office signing things I didn't understand. I trusted Clara. She handled everything. Greg, Mike said, and his voice was full of admiration. Clara Reed was a goddamn tactical genius. That day she had you sign a document transferring the house out of your names and into the Clara Reed Irrevocable Trust. A fortress. Nothing can touch it. Not creditors, not lawsuits, and not greedy relatives. I couldn't process it. But if it's in a trust, what did I sign for Todd? What did I give them? You gave them a piece of paper, Greg. Mike chuckled. You signed a quitclaim deed. You basically signed a document that said, I hereby give you any and all interest I might have in this property. But your interest was 0. You didn't own it. The trust did. That deed you signed, it's worthless. It's a legal-looking napkin. It's not worth the paper it's printed on. The breath I had been holding for 3 weeks came out in a ragged gasp. The garage, the cold, the locks, the hunger, all of it. It was all for nothing. They can't get a loan on it, I whispered, the realization dawning like a sunrise. They can't get a dime, Mike confirmed. The bank's title search will come back showing the property is held by an irrevocable trust. They'll laugh Todd right out of the building. He has no authority. He has no claim. He has nothing. I started to laugh. It was a horrible, dry, coughing laugh that hurt my chest, but I couldn't stop. It was the laugh of a man who had just been pulled back from the grave. But Mike, I said, a new thought striking me. If the house is in the trust, who controls the trust Clara is? She's gone. That, Mike said, is the most beautiful part of all, Greg. That's Clara's masterpiece. She structured the trust with two trustees, herself and me, with me as the successor trustee upon her death. But I resigned my position as successor trustee this morning. What? Why would you? The trust documents, Greg. Clara wrote them herself. In the event of her death and my resignation, the primary beneficiary automatically assumes full control as the sole acting trustee. He paused, letting the final piece fall into place. Who, I whispered, my heart pounding, is the primary beneficiary? You, Greg. It's always been you. You just inherited full ironclad control of the Clara Reed Irrevocable Trust. As of 10 a.m. this morning, you are for all legal purposes the house. You are the only one who can sell it. You are the only one who can borrow against it. And you are the only one who can evict the tenants. Todd's voice echoed in my head. He's in the garage. He's not himself. We're his loving family. I looked around the cold, dark, filthy space. My prison. Greg, Mike said, they don't own the house, you do. The fever, the cough, the despair, it all vanished, burned away by a sudden, pure, white-hot rage. They hadn't just put me in the garage of the house I gave them. They had put me in the garage of the house that was and had always been mine. I was a different man. The garage was the same. The air was just as cold, my cough just as real, the fever still hot on my skin. But the despair was gone, burned away by the white-hot rage of Clara's final gift. They thought I was a senile old man. They had no idea I was a loaded gun. I used the burner phone to text Maria Diaz. Mike was right. They don't own it. Tell him. The reply came an hour later. He knows. He says to stay in character. Play sick. Play weak. They're desperate. Let them make the next move. I didn't have to wait long. The desperation was leaking through the walls. I heard them fighting. Not whispers this time, but sharp, panicked hisses. What do you mean, the trust? I heard Todd roar from the kitchen. The bank said the title search is complicated. We don't have time for complicated, Megan. I don't know, Todd. She was crying. I thought you handled it. You said he just gave it to us. He did. I saw him sign. The old fool signed it. Well, the bank won't approve the loan, not without more proof that we're stable. The underwriter said it's a red flag. There was a crash like a glass hitting the wall. I heard Megan scream. We don't have time. Megan Sharkey he's not a patient man. I need that money now. There was a long silence, just the sound of Megan's quiet sobbing. Then I heard her voice suddenly stronger, slick with a new idea, a new angle. Okay, she said. Okay, so we show them we're stable. We show them we're the perfect, happy family. What are you talking about? Todd snapped. We'll have a party, she said, her voice gaining confidence. This Saturday, a baby celebration party. We'll invite all our friends. We'll show them the nursery. The nursery. My room. We'll be the perfect, loving family taking care of our new home. And we'll invite Mr. Henderson, the loan officer from the bank. Invite the banker to a party. Todd sounded confused. Yes, not as a banker, Todd, as a guest. We'll charm him. We'll show him this beautiful house, show him how much in love we are, how excited we are for the baby. We'll make him want to approve the loan. We can have him sign the final papers right here. It's just a formality, right? Todd was quiet. I could hear the gears turning in his head. That's brilliant. That is actually brilliant. It's not a business meeting. It's a celebration. It's perfect. I sat on my cot in the dark, a cold smile spreading across my face. A baby party for a baby that didn't exist. A loan application for a house they didn't own. They weren't just walking into the trap. They were building it themselves. I picked up the burner phone. I texted Maria. Party. Saturday. Fake baby. The banker is coming here to sign the loan. It's the final trap. The response from Mike relayed through her who came 5 minutes later. Excellent. Let them. Tell me the exact time. My team will be there. We'll bring our own party favors. The party was in full swing. I knew because I could smell it. The heavy, greasy scent of roasted meat and the sharp floral perfume of strange women wafted under the locked kitchen door. It was a smell I hadn't smelled in months. Then I heard the music. Not the soft classical music Clara used to play, but loud thumping, obnoxious music, the sound of a hollow celebration. My cough was getting worse, a deep barking sound that echoed in the concrete box of the garage. I was burning with fever. I was just a prop, the sick old man hidden away while they celebrated their victory. The small side door, the one Maria had the key to, clicked open. It wasn't Maria, it was Megan. She was wearing a tight, bright blue dress, the kind that clung to her. She looked beautiful. She looked like a complete and utter stranger. "Dad," she said, her voice sugary sweet, a sound that now made my skin crawl. "We're having a few friends over. To, celebrate the baby. We want you to be part of it. Just for a little while." I knew this was part of the show, the final act of their play. They needed the senile old man to make an appearance to prove to their new important friends that they were a loving, caring family. I'm very sick, Pumpkin." I rasped, my cough conveniently rattling my chest. "I don't think I can." "Oh, don't be silly," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Her fingers with their perfectly manicured nails dug into my arm. "Just for a few minutes. It's important. Mr. Henderson from the bank is here. We want him to see the whole happy family." There it was. The banker. The man who held the key to their $250,000 payday. She practically dragged me out of the garage. My legs were weak from the fever, my head swimming. The walk through the side yard felt like crossing a desert. She didn't lead me to the kitchen door. She led me to the front door. The transition was blinding. My house, which I hadn't seen the inside of in weeks, was packed. There must have been 50 people. They were holding glasses of champagne, laughing too loudly, picking at food on catered silver trays. And my house, it was gone. Clara's warm oak furniture was gone. The comfortable sofa we had chosen together was gone. The soft, buttery yellow walls Clara had loved were gone. Everything was gray and white and cold, reflective chrome. It looked like a hotel lobby. It looked like them. "See?" Megan chirped, steering me through the crowd. People parted for us. I could feel their eyes on me. Their whispers were audible. "Is that?" "Poor old thing. He lives in the garage," I heard. Their eyes were filled with that awful, familiar pity. The poor old man. Todd saw us. He was standing near the fireplace, talking to a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit, who I knew must be the banker, Mr. Henderson. Todd's face lit up in a grotesque performance of joy. "Dad, you made it!" he boomed, rushing over and wrapping a heavy arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. The smell of his expensive cologne was suffocating. "Everyone, this is my wonderful father-in-law, Greg. We're so blessed to have him living with us. An absolute blessing." He squeezed my shoulder, a painful, warning grip. "Play along." I did as Mike had instructed. I played the part. I let my body tremble. I looked around the room, my eyes wide and unfocused, as if I didn't recognize my own home. "Clara," I whispered, looking right at Megan. Is the roast ready?" "The guests are all here." Megan's face tightened for a fraction of a second, but she recovered, forcing a sad smile for the banker. "See, Mr. Henderson, he gets a little confused sometimes, but he's so happy to be here." Mr. Henderson gave me a polite, uncomfortable nod, the kind you give a child or a dog. "Of course. A lovely home you have here. A lovely family." We're so excited about the loan, Todd said smoothly, steering the banker away from me, his arm still draped over me, pinning me in place. That nursery, he gestured toward my old room, is just going to be beautiful. It's just a formality, right? Signing the final papers. Just a formality, the banker agreed, smiling. They left me standing alone in the middle of the room, a prop whose purpose was served. I stood there trembling, playing the part of the senile fool, as strangers swirled around me, laughing, drinking, and celebrating their lies in my home. And then the music stopped. It didn't fade out. It was cut off. A sudden, shocking silence fell over the room. The chatter died. Everyone turned to the front door. It was wide open. Standing in the entryway, silhouetted against the evening light, was a man. He was not wearing a suit like the other guests. He was in his 70s, ramrod straight, and wearing the formal dress blue uniform of the United States Marine Corps. His chest was a solid block of color covered in so many medals and ribbons it looked like a shield of honor. The silver star, the purple heart, all of it. It was Mike Sullivan. Behind him, flanking him like two dark shadows, were two men in the most expensive, severe-looking suits I had ever seen. They were not guests. They were lawyers. They carried briefcases that looked heavy, full of ammunition. And behind them, standing small but defiant, was Maria Diaz, my neighbor. She was holding her cell phone up the small red light, indicating it was recording everything. The entire party froze. This was not on the guest list. Todd, who was halfway through a toast with the banker, stopped his champagne flute hovering in the air. His face, which had been flush with victory, drained of all color. It went from confusion to a pale, sickly white. He strode forward, his mask of the happy host falling away, replaced by the snarling, desperate face I knew from the garage. "What is this?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the silent room. "Who the hell are you? This is a private party. You are not invited. Get out!" Mike Sullivan took one single deliberate step into the house. He moved with a heavy, dangerous calm, his eyes scanning the room. He looked at Megan, who looked like she was about to faint. He looked at the terrified banker. He looked at Todd. Then his eyes found me, standing by the wall, still trembling in my old work coat. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. He turned back to Todd. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room, low and lethal, the voice of a man who had given orders in combat. "I'm Michael Sullivan. I'm legal counsel for the Clara Reed Irrevocable Trust. And this," he said, gesturing to the house, "the walls, the floor, is my client's property." Todd let out a short, sharp laugh, but it sounded like a bark of pure fear. Your client is a senile old man in a garage. This is my house. He gave it to me. I have the papers." Mike just smiled. It was not a nice smile. "No," Mike said. "Your papers are worthless." He turned his head slightly, looking right at me. "Greg, I believe it's time." Todd looked at Mike, then looked back at me, his eyes wide with a confusion so profound it was almost comical. "Greg, what the hell is he talking about?" And I stopped shaking. I stood up straight, my fever and sickness forgotten, burned away by adrenaline. I let the old filthy work coat slide from my shoulders. It dropped to the polished hardwood floor with a soft thud. Underneath, I was wearing the clean pressed shirt Maria had smuggled in for me. I looked my son-in-law, the man who had locked me in, the man who had plotted to make me disappear, directly in the eyes. "He's talking about me," I said, my voice clear and strong, ringing through the stunned silence of the room. "Now, Todd, get out of my house." I stood there, breathing in the air of my own living room. It felt different. It felt mine. Todd just stared at me, his mouth half open. His brain was visibly struggling, trying to reconcile the trembling, senile old man from the garage with the man standing before him now. The confusion on his face was delicious. He sputtered, You can't. This is my party. I have the deed, Megan. Tell him." Before Megan could find her voice, Mike Sullivan took another slow, deliberate step into the room. He unbuttoned the top button of his immaculate Marine uniform, a casual, almost bored movement. He completely ignored Todd's sputtering and turned his attention to the banker, Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Henderson, is it?" Mike's voice was polite, conversational. "My name is Mike Sullivan. I'm legal counsel for the Clara Reed Irrevocable Trust. I'm afraid you've been brought here tonight under extremely false pretenses." The banker, a man who lived by paperwork and risk assessment, looked terrified. I don't understand. The paperwork I reviewed, the title, was fraudulent," Mike said simply. "But we'll get to that in a moment. That's not why we're really here." He turned his full attention, that heavy assessing 1,000-yard stare, onto Todd. Todd physically flinched like a dog expecting a blow. "We're here," Mike said, his voice dropping slightly, "to discuss an outstanding debt. $150,000, owed to a Mr. Sharkey in Las Vegas. The deadline, I believe, was last week." If Todd had been pale before, he was now the color of ash. He looked like he'd been shot. I watched the party guests gasp a collective sharp intake of breath. Megan let out a small strangled sound, like a mouse caught in a trap. I don't know what you're talking about," Todd stammered, but sweat was already beading on his forehead, shining under the new cold track lighting he'd installed. "Don't you?" Mike tilted his head, a gesture of almost academic curiosity. "My associate," he nodded to one of the dark suits, "had a very productive conversation with Mr. Sharkey's office this morning. He was very interested to learn that you were attempting to secure a loan on a fraudulent property to pay him. Very interested. In fact, he asked us to, shall we say, expedite the collection process. He's sending his own associates to Pasadena. They should be here. Well, any minute now." Todd stumbled backward, his hand grasping the back of a chair for support. No, you can't. You don't know him." "Oh, I think we do," Mike said pleasantly. "But that's just your debt. Let's talk about Greg's money. Let's talk about the $40,000 you transferred from his personal retirement account 2 months ago using the passwords you tricked him into giving you under the pretense of paying his bills." Mr. Henderson, the banker, looked absolutely horrified. $40,000? That's wire fraud. That's a federal crime." "Yes, it is," Mike agreed, as if discussing the weather. "And he did it while keeping his own father-in-law locked in an unheated garage, slowly getting sick." A wave of murmurs rolled through the crowd. The pity was gone, replaced by a low, angry buzzing. Todd looked cornered, rabid. He did the only thing a coward could do. He turned on his wife. "Megan, this is your fault. You pushed me. You and your endless spending. My fault." Megan shrieked, her own mask of the perfect pregnant wife finally evaporating, revealing the terrified, greedy woman beneath. "My spending. Oh, let's not fight." Mike interrupted their marital bliss, holding up a hand. "There is plenty of blame to go around. You see, Mr. Henderson, the real problem here is that they aren't even honest with each other." He looked at Todd. "You thought you were the only thief in the house, didn't you, Todd? You thought your little wife was just a weak-willed, sensitive participant." Mike nodded to the second lawyer, who stepped forward and handed a thin, crisp file not to Todd, but to a shocked Megan. What is this?" Megan whispered, her hands shaking as she opened it. "That," Mike said, his voice devoid of all mercy, "is a detailed summary of the $20,000 you stole from your father's personal savings starting 3 months before Todd ever even got the passwords. The money you spent on Gucci handbags, spa days at the Beverly Wilshire, a new designer wardrobe, and my personal favorite, a girls' weekend to Napa Valley first class last month, all while your father was shivering in the garage." I watched them. I watched the masks melt away in real time. This was better than I had imagined. This wasn't just justice. It was an autopsy. And Mike Sullivan was the surgeon. Todd's head snapped toward her. The look on his face was no longer fear. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. He had been betrayed by his co-conspirator. You what? He hissed, his voice a low growl. While you were, I, Megan stammered, backing away from him, clutching the file. So, Mike continued, addressing the silent, horrified room. To summarize for Mr. Henderson, we have Mr. Todd Bishop, who stole $40,000 to pay a loan shark. We have Ms. Megan Reed, who stole $20,000 for luxury goods. A combined $60,000 stolen from the man they locked in a garage, faked a pregnancy to isolate, and were actively plotting to have declared senile. I believe, Mr. Henderson, that constitutes what you in the banking world call an unacceptable risk. Mr. Henderson, the banker, snapped his briefcase shut with a sound that echoed like a gunshot in the dead quiet room. I think I've seen enough, he said, adjusting his tie, his face pale. This loan application is of course withdrawn. I believe I have a professional and legal duty to report this immediately. The party was over. The guests were frozen, watching the two of them, Todd and Megan, staring at each other, not as husband and wife, but as two desperate criminals who had just been caught. The financial trap had snapped shut. Mr. Henderson, the banker, was already halfway to the door, his face pale, muttering apologies as he pushed through the stunned guests. The party was disintegrating. People were grabbing their coats, their faces a mixture of disgust and fascination, eager to escape the train wreck, but even more eager to be the first to tell the story. Todd watched his $250,000 lifeline walk out the door. The desperation, the fear of the loan shark, the public humiliation, it all coalesced into one final explosive burst of rage. He lunged not at me but at Mike. You, he roared, his voice cracking. You did this, you interfering old bastard. You can't just. This is my house. He grabbed a framed picture from the wall, one of his new cold, abstract art pieces, and raised it like a weapon. Mike didn't even flinch. He just raised one eyebrow, a look of profound disappointment on his face. Your house, Mr. Bishop, I find that fascinating, because I have a team at the county recorder's office right now, and they seem to have a different opinion. I have the deed, Todd screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. He's a senile old fool. He gave it to me. I saw him sign. Megan, tell them he signed the papers. Megan, who was now crumpled on one of her new gray, soulless sofas, just sobbed into her hands. He did sign, Todd. He did. Exactly, Todd yelled, feeling a surge of righteous indignation. He signed it. It's legal. It's mine. Now get the hell out of my house. Mike Sullivan looked at me, a silent question. He was the general, but this was my battlefield. He had disarmed the enemy. Now it was my turn to take back the territory. I took a step forward. All eyes in the room turned to me. The whispers stopped. Even Megan's sobs hitched. I was no longer the trembling old man in the work coat. I was just Greg Reed. And for the first time, I felt like the owner of the room. You're right, Todd, I said, my voice calm, cutting through the silence. I did sign papers. I remember it clearly. It was in Mr. Henderson's office, the old one, not the new one, and I signed them. Todd's face flooded with triumphant relief. See, he admits it, now get out. But, I continued, I've always been a bit of a fool with paperwork. Clara, my wife, she always handled the complicated things. She was smart, Todd. Much smarter than you. And much, much smarter than me. Mike chose that moment to hand a single crisp sheet of paper to the banker, who had paused at the door, unable to look away from the drama. Mr. Henderson, Mike said, perhaps you'd like to see the actual controlling document for this property. Page 1. Henderson's eyes scanned the document. He frowned. This is an irrevocable trust. The Clara Reed Trust. That's right, I said, looking at Todd. 5 years ago, Clara, my brilliant wife, saw you coming a mile away. She knew you were a financial vampire. as she put it. So she protected her family. She protected me. She moved this house, this property, and everything on it into an ironclad, irrevocable trust. Todd's face was blank. He didn't understand. Trust what? So he still signed his share over to me. Mike Sullivan finally laughed. It was a short, sharp barking sound that had no humor in it. His share, son, you still don't get it, do you? The document he signed for you, that quitclaim deed you were so proud of, it was worthless. It was a piece of paper saying he was giving you his interest in the property. But his interest was zero. You can't give away what you don't own. He didn't own the house, Todd. The trust did. Todd's eyes darted from Mike to the banker to me. But Clara's dead. So the trust, it goes to me, to Megan. Wrong again, Mike said. Clara was a very thorough woman. She named me as successor trustee, and I officially resigned that position at 10 a.m. this morning. So who? Todd whispered. The trust document is very clear, Mike said, pulling another copy from his briefcase and slapping it onto the chrome coffee table. In the event of her death and my resignation, the sole primary beneficiary assumes all control as the acting trustee. And the sole primary beneficiary, he turned with a theatrical flourish and pointed a single steady finger right at me, is Gregory Reed. I let the silence hang for a moment. I watched Todd's entire world, his entire plan, his entire future collapse in his eyes. So, no, Todd, I said, taking another step closer. You're not getting a $250,000 loan on my house. You're not going to be paying off your shark in Vegas. You're not going to be disappearing. I walked past him to the middle of the room. My room. I looked at the gray walls, the ugly furniture. And you're not, I said, turning to face him, staying here. I walked over to the new stainless steel refrigerator, opened it, and pulled out a bottle of water. I opened it and took a long, slow drink. The water was cold. It tasted like victory. I looked at Todd, who was standing there, shaking his face, a mask of purple rage and disbelief. I looked at Megan, who was just a broken heap on the sofa. I looked at the stunned, silent guests. Todd, I said, my voice no longer trembling, no longer weak, but full of the authority he had tried to steal. The party's over. Get out of my house. Todd was shaking. His mind, which had been working so fast, just moments before, had completely stalled. He was trapped. He stared at me, at the water bottle in my hand, at the cold, unimpressed faces of Mike's lawyers. He couldn't process the reversal. He couldn't accept that the senile old fool from the garage held all the cards. He did the only thing he had left. He lunged at his last line of defense, my identity. No! He screamed, his voice raw and breaking. You're lying. This is a trick. He's nothing. He's a poor, broke carpenter. He's just a worthless old man. He has nothing. The guests who had started to back away froze again. Todd pointed a shaking finger at me, his face purple with rage. You're just a goddamn carpenter, a failed carpenter. You've lived off your wife your whole life. You've got nothing. Mike Sullivan, who had been watching this meltdown with the detached interest of a scientist, finally sighed. He shook his head as if genuinely disappointed. You really didn't do your homework, did you, son? Mike said, his voice laced with pity. He took a step forward, adjusting the cuffs of his uniform. You thought he was a simple carpenter. That's adorable. You never wondered why my name Sullivan sounded familiar? You never wondered about the Sterling and Reed Sterling custom homes? Todd's eyes went blank. Reed Sterling? That's right, Mike said. Gregory Reed and Clara Sterling, my partners. The company I started with my two best friends right after we got back from the war. Greg wasn't just a carpenter. He was the carpenter. He was the artist. Clara was the financial brain, and I handled the contracts. We built half of the luxury developments in this valley. Todd just shook his head, muttering, "No, no." "Oh yes," Mike said. "And 10 years ago when Clara first got sick, Greg and I decided to sell our shares to a national developer. My share went into my company, Clara's went into her trust, and Greg sold his stake for a very tidy sum, $15 million to be exact." The room was so quiet I could hear the ice melting in the abandoned champagne glasses. 15 million. "He lives simply because he wants to, you idiot." Mike snapped, his patience finally gone. "Because he earned it. Not because he has to. He lives simply because he values work and humility, two things you wouldn't recognize if they hit you in the face. He was never the broke old man. He was the bank. And you just tried to rob it." As those words landed, as the final crushing weight of the truth settled on Todd, the front door opened again. This time it wasn't lawyers. It was two uniformed Pasadena police officers. They walked in with a heavy, purposeful calm, their eyes scanning the room and landing immediately on Todd. "Todd Bishop," the lead officer asked, his hand already on his cuffs. Todd didn't even turn. He was still staring at me, his face a mask of total, absolute ruin. "Mr. Todd Bishop," the officer said again, louder, "you are under arrest for check fraud, wire fraud, and felony elder abuse." One of the lawyers from Mike's team stepped forward, handing the officer a thick file. "Officer, here is the documented evidence of the $40,000 fraudulent transfer, along with witness statements regarding his imprisonment of Mr. Reed in the garage and his conspiracy to secure a fraudulent loan. We are ready to press all charges." The officers moved in. They grabbed Todd's arms. The sound of the metal ratchet on the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the room. "No!" he suddenly screamed, a desperate animal sound, trying to pull away. "You can't. It was her. It was her idea. Megan, tell them." But it was too late. The officers hauled him, stumbling and resisting, toward the door, past the horrified guests, past the banker, and past his weeping, broken wife. The illusion was gone. The con was over. The trap had shut. The sound of the front door closing behind the police officers was final. It was the sound of a life ending. Todd didn't go quietly. He was screaming, not with rage anymore, but with a high-pitched, desperate terror. "It was her, Megan. She planned it all I never wanted. She told me about the money. She told me you were senile. She lied." His voice was cut off as they put him in the car. The party wasn't a party anymore. It was a morgue with music. The loud, obnoxious thumping was still playing in the background, a grotesque soundtrack to the ruin. The guests, who had been frozen in horror, now scrambled for the exit, not in a panic, but in a silent, hurried shame. They wouldn't look at me. They wouldn't look at Mike. They certainly wouldn't look at Megan. They just wanted to be away, to pretend they hadn't seen this, to get to their cars, so they could start telling the story. The banker, Mr. Henderson, was long gone. Mike Sullivan's lawyers were packing their briefcases with a quiet, satisfied efficiency. Mike himself was standing by the fireplace, looking at the ugly, cold, gray walls. "You're going to need to repaint this, Greg," he said quietly, as if we were just discussing renovations. Maria Diaz came over, her phone still in her hand, her face a mask of grim satisfaction. She just squeezed my arm. The house emptied in less than 3 minutes. The only things left were the half-eaten trays of expensive food, dozens of abandoned champagne flutes, and Megan. She was still on the gray sofa, a broken doll in a bright blue dress. She was no longer sobbing. She was just empty. She was staring at the open front door, at the space where her husband had just been dragged away in handcuffs. She was alone. No fake baby. No adoring husband. No new house. And as Mike had so clearly pointed out, she was $60,000 in debt, with no job, no skills, and a co-conspirator who was now going to blame her for everything to save himself. She slowly stood up, her movements stiff, robotic. She looked at Mike. She looked at his lawyers. She looked at Maria. Then her eyes found mine. She walked toward me, her steps unsteady as if she didn't know how her legs worked. She didn't stop in the living room. She walked right past me through the open front door and into the night air. I followed her, Mike close behind me. She didn't run. She just walked to the top step of the porch I had built, and she collapsed. She sat down heavily, her blue dress pooling around her on the bricks. The music from inside was still faintly audible. She put her head in her hands, and she began to cry. It was not the hysterical fake sobbing from the party. It was a low animal sound of absolute bottomless despair. I stood in the doorway looking down at her. The cold night air felt good on my face. She looked up at me, her face a ruin of smeared makeup and tears. Her eyes were no longer the sharp, calculating eyes of a con artist. They were the terrified, hollow eyes of a child who is completely, hopelessly lost. "Dad," she whispered, her voice a broken rasp. I didn't know." The lie was so reflexive, so pathetic, it barely even registered as an insult. "I didn't know about Vegas," she stammered. "I didn't know he owed money. I just thought we needed a little help. I thought She couldn't finish. She couldn't even build a coherent lie anymore. Her entire world was gone. I stood there in the doorway, the man who owned everything, looking at the girl who had just lost it all. She was my daughter. She was a thief. She was a liar. She was a co-conspirator in a plot that could have killed me. She was my daughter. I shook my head, not in anger anymore, but in a deep, profound sadness. "You knew, Megan," I said, my voice quiet, but it carried in the night air. "You didn't know about Vegas, maybe, but you knew what you were doing. You knew you were stealing from me. You knew the baby was a lie. You knew." She didn't deny it. She just cried, her shoulders shaking. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go?" She whispered the question, not really for me, but for the empty, dark street. "You chose this," I said, and the words were harder than any tool in my workshop. "You chose him. You chose the money. You chose the lie. And this is the consequence." She flinched as if I had slapped her. "Dad, please," she begged, the word a desperate, raw sound. "I have nothing. I have nowhere. Don't leave me out here." I looked at her, my daughter, my pumpkin, the little girl I had pushed on the swings, and I saw the ghost of Clara, her hand on my arm. Protect her. But what did that mean now? Protecting her had caused this. Protecting her from consequences, from reality, had turned her into this weak, greedy, hollow person. Protecting her now would just be a different kind of poison. I reached into my pocket. Not the pocket of my old filthy work coat, but the pocket of my clean slacks. I pulled out a single set of keys. I walked down the steps and stood over her. She looked up, her face a mess, her eyes terrified. I dropped the keys into her lap. They landed with a small metallic jingle. What is this?" she whispered. "It's a key, I said. "It's to a small studio apartment in Echo Park. It's not Pasadena. It's not luxury. It's a room. I've paid the rent for 6 months. After that, you are on your own." She stared at the keys as if they were a snake. I reached into my wallet, pulled out a single debit card, and dropped it on top of the keys. "There is $5,000 in that account. That is the last dollar of my money you will ever see. You will use it to eat. You will use it to buy clothes for job interviews. You will use it to start over. Or you will use it on handbags and spa days. I don't care. It's your choice, but when it's gone, it is gone." She just stared at the card. "Dad." "This is it, Megan," I said, my voice final. "This is your last chance. Not from me. From yourself. You are 38 years old. It is time for you to finally grow up. Go get a job. Learn what it feels like to earn something. Learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. She slowly, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold them, picked up the keys and the card. I looked at her for a long moment. My daughter. A stranger. Goodbye, Megan, I said. I turned around. I walked back up the steps past the abandoned food, past the staring faces of Mike and Maria. I walked into my house, and I closed the solid oak door, the thud echoing in the empty gray room. I locked the deadbolt. I didn't look back. I walked through the house past the ugly chrome furniture that would be gone by morning. I walked into the kitchen. I unlocked the door to the garage. My prison. I opened it. The smell of oil and dust and old wood hit me. It smelled like home. My tools were still there, shoved in the corner under the tarp. I walked over and pulled the tarp off. My saws, my chisels, my planes. I picked up an old hand-carved wooden mallet Clara had bought me 30 years ago. The wood was smooth, worn, familiar in my hand. It fit perfectly. I stood there in the quiet, in the cold, in the dark. And for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't cold. I wasn't scared. I was free. I was at peace. This story teaches us a painful but powerful lesson. True family is built on respect and loyalty, not just blood. Unconditional love should never require the sacrifice of your own dignity. For years, I believed that being a good father meant enduring everything in silence. But I learned that kindness without boundaries is not a virtue. It's an invitation for abuse. True strength isn't about how much you can tolerate, but about having the courage to protect yourself, even if it means losing those you thought you could never live without. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let go. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.